everyone, and welcome to a mini rant. Sorry, I have to get this seriously out of my system. Right. So basically, the BBC, in all of their wonderful knowledge and all of that, decided to do a version of Watership Down. Woohoo, you say. It's diabolical, it's terrible, it's insulting, it's everything that it shouldn't be. And it's really got under my skin. So, what are the issues with the Watership Down from the BBC this Christmas? Number one, the rabbit characters do not look like rabbits. And it upset me because the BBC has got at its hands quite often really good animators, really good directors and teams who work jolly hard to produce good quality programs. They have good budgets that they can set aside for projects and they have resources, so you would expect top notch. No, the rabbits in it look like mutant hares. Their ears face every direction except a natural rabbit ear directions. They're in this constant freaked out position of standing, which in all honesty I've never really seen a rabbit do. And the whole body and movement is just disturbing. The storyline is nothing at all like the book. So if seriously, if you guys want to see Watership Down, read the good book, the original book, and watch the original animation because that's pretty close. The one the BBC has done has cut out huge chunks of the book story. In fact, pieces that were pivotal, and they've gone and complete and utterly obliterated the order of things that happened. They've added in dramatic, and I mean dramatic, scenes which never happened in the book, and it's absolutely terrible. And though the voice actors have got good voices, they do not suit the characters. Sorry, this is major rant time for me. It's got they've tried to make the rabbits look human to a degree because with rabbits, by the way, this is a drawing of a real rabbit, you know, Mr. Flopsy down the road. With rabbits, their eyes protrude outwards, just slightly. They have quite a bulge over the skull, and that allows their eyes to sit sideways to the head, so their eyes sit kind of either side. Humans' eyes, of course, sit forward from the skull, which means that humans have full vision in front but limited vision to the side, and bunnies or rabbits have vision to the side but they have a blind spot directly in the middle. But the animators have done the eyes on these characters like in both ways. It's not good. It's not good. Which doesn't help because they've sunk the eyes into the skulls, so the heads of these animated so-called rabbits look really freaky. They've turned, spoiler alert in action, spoiler alert. They have the Tyflay or Bigwig character killing animals left, right and centre and being over aggressive and not realistic. In the snare scene, which is quite a famous piece in the book and also on the original film, which was in the original film, it was portrayed very well to how a snare works. Basically, when an animal gets caught in a snare, hang on. Right, here's your animal. Walks into a snare, and the snare catches round. There's two types of snare. There's ones that lock and won't let the animal move, but they don't tighten. And then there's ones that, as the animal moves, it tightens and tightens and suffocates. Don't ask how I know about these things, it's just I've seen some pretty disturbing things. Now the snare that catches Bigwig, so imagine this is Bigwig, it's one of those that locks and then pulls tight. So where every movement, so if Bigwig was struggling, every movement that is getting tighter. Now in the original film they portray it correctly because the line is with the wire is very often short, so the animal can't run off, it can't scurry off, it's literally forced to the ground and they will lay there and suffocate because their weight pulls them backwards. A bit like hanging, but on sideways. In the BBC's adaptation, the brave Bigwig is pulling in that direction with the snare line right over, like 10 miles over in that direction, up a hill. Sorry. Which is not really how a snare works. Well, hey ho, the BBC know best. So that was really just a bad piece. And in fact, the music that I've picked has no... How can I say? The original Watership Down had a beautiful melody to it, and it also had the famous piece Bright Eyes, which was used when Fiver found out about Hazel being so-called shot. Now, in the BBC's adaptation, there is no melody change apart from this dramatic music. A lot of the scenes are literally of these so-called rabbits running, so it feels very rushed, and it gives the impression that the rabbits literally took 5 minutes to get from A to B. There's no mention of the rats in the barn. The business with Cowslip's Warren is not very nice at all, the way that they've animated it. They show things that in the Warren, the snares Warren, they've mixed everything up, so nothing's in contextual whatnot. And in the snares Warren, there's a well where one of the rabbits, one of the other rabbits, Laburnum, had pushed stones into a wall to make the shape of Ella Hurrah, if that's how you pronounce it, I don't know. But in the BBC's adaptation, there's a massive, great big geode in the ground, and all the females, all the does, are stood there worshipping it. It's like, oh my god, this is stupid. And worst thing ever, Strawberry is a female in the BBC adaptation. What the seriously, why BBC? Strawberry is actually a very key pivotal character, and he is a he for a reason. Bluebell, who is one of the rabbits who comes into it later with Holly, because they're travelling buddies. He's, in the BBC adaptation, he's part of the first group that goes, and he's basically a sex-obsessed rabbit. Rabbits are not sex-obsessed. This is a misconception. I mean, geez, I've walked around enough warrens to notice that not all rabbits are doing it. So that's another thing that the BBC have changed. So in the book, you've got things like, Toeflax got killed, Pimpernel got killed, but they were travelling with Holly and Bluebell, and they got killed by, Pimpernel got killed by Cowslip's Warren. And that's kind of been skipped over. And what's really annoying me is also the destruction of the Sandalford Warren. In the book, it is very graphically described, and it's described in the correct way that a warren would be destroyed. Now, when landowners go in and they want to do a building site and there's animals on the land, they'll get a survey, and this is a lot of this is actually legal. They have to get a survey, assess if there's newts, then they're protected under the 1981 Wildlife Protection Act, and they have to take certain actions, either move them or something gets done. With rabbits, they will call in pest control people who will take canisters of gas and gas the rabbits, put nets out, guns, whatever is needed, ferrets, and the rabbits will be killed in as a humanely possible method. In the BBC's adaptation, the diggers go straight in and dig up the warren. That is the biggest load of BS in the universe, because it is not a legal way that the UK would deal with rabbits. And believe me, UK has had enough work dealing with rabbits, and I love rabbits. We're not bloodthirsty morons in the UK. Sadly, that image is going to give people the complete and utter wrong idea of how warrens are dealt with when they're buildings and such. And yes, in the book, Holly does describe when the diggers go in, but that's after all of the rabbits have been killed by the gas, and the diggers come in and they tear up the earth, and there are bodies in it. The rabbits aren't alive when the diggers are going in. So that really peeved me off no end. And I mean really angered me, because it's complete tripe. Yeah, as I said, this is a rant. Now, something else that got to me was the fact that, a bit like in the original film, they did it where Holly somehow managed to go past the rabbits on the downs and get all the way to Ephrata and then come all the way back. So the original film did have an error in that sense, but they had tighter constrictions on time and budget back then for animation, so I can forgive that. The original film did a blooming good job. A lot of hard work went into that. Now, the BBC's followed that, but they've done Ephrata in it looks like a disused train depot, some sort of, there's stacks and all sorts of that. It wasn't in a building. Ephrata was at the corner of a crossroad in a bridle path in a field, and that's how they stayed hidden, because they used the ditches for the hierarch pits, and they were hidden under bushes. The burrows were hidden. Oh yeah, you can see I was screaming at the TV last night. I had to watch it just to scream at it. And it's like the marking. Rabbits of Ephrata were marked as kittens, and they were bitten underneath the chin or on the flanks or on the legs, shoulders, areas that could clearly be seen, and the scar could clearly be seen, right? Well, in the BBC's wonderful adaptation, pardon the sarcasm, they have this sickle-clawed rabbit at the bottom of a stairwell, and that bit makes no sense whatsoever, because that sort of building wouldn't have had that sort of stairwell to it. Yeah, I was just pulling it apart. So that didn't work at all, and a sickle-shaped rabbit tore a scratch down their legs. Well, a single scratch is going to be covered eventually by the fur, because rabbits do have fur, oddly enough. And it's not going to be as proud and showing as a bite, which would have been inflicted as a kitten. And they do this dramatic scene where Holly, I think it's Holly Bluebell and somebody else, is scratched by this scythe-clawed rabbit, which is not in the book, because Holly and co never actually do get marked. They escape before that happens. And one of the officers, Orcus, they've got him in there, but he was killed before the Hazel's team go to Ephrata to negotiate for Doze. The portrayal of Kihar, they didn't even get the gull's friggin' sound right. Black-headed and Mediterranean gulls sound completely different to herring gulls and common gulls. Clearly the animators hadn't got a freaking clue. And they've portrayed Kihar as, well, a jerk. In fact, the whole thing is almost done as if it's meant to be like a comedy. They've tried to put humour in there. I mean, it's so hard because there's so much BS in the whole thing the BBC has produced. At the beginning of the programme, diving back, sorry, there's the scene where Hazel, Bigwig, Dandelion, Acorn, and the other rabbits who have left the warren. Please note there were no does around there. They go through a wood, they encounter a badger, this is in the book, they encounter a badger, they manage to get away, and then they come to a river, which they rest at, but then Bigwig swims over and sees a dog and tells them to go across. So the Dandelion and I think it was Blackberry find a piece of wood, and they put Fiver and Pipkin, who is not even mentioned in this BBC one. No, Pipkin. Bloody pivotal Pipkin. So they put Pipkin and Fiver on the board, and Bigwig and Silver push them out across the river. They never actually see the dog, so they escape. Now in the BBC's version, the rabbits are chased by the Owsler all the way to the river, and they find a bin. I mean, I don't even think anybody's got this type of bin anymore. They find a metal bin lid, and they all get into it, and they all get across the river. It's just nothing like the book. Now, a few of you are probably thinking, well, why are you so het up and uptight about this? It's an adaptation, right? You can't surely take a source material which is a classic, beautifully written book. Richard Adams' stuff, if you've ever had the honour of reading it, it's stunning. He wrote The Plague Dogs. There was, is it Sharik the Bear? And there's several other books that he's written, and they are amazing. They are factual in his research of how the animals live, about how laboratories work. They are dark. They make you actually sit back and think, my God, is that really what humans are like? It's absolutely stunning work. And to me, what the BBC has produced is the biggest insult on the planet. I mean, ITV did their own version of Watership Down, and that was bad enough. I mean, they had, I think it was Blackberry as a girl. Again, they had to include a female. So that was a pretty naff one. And they had the General Woundwort character really, well, the animation was shoddy. And they had bits that didn't happen in the book. Actually, they had a lot of bits. So it makes me wonder if the BBC based their version off of the ITV version, which was loose as it was. Oh, and the BBC ruined the farm part. So, yeah, I'm just going to keep on tearing this apart. So, in the book, Hazel and his rabbits are settled on Watership Down. And they never actually refer to it as a down. In the BBC, they're constantly going on about the down, which is just stupid. Because rabbits who live in Newbury, and the place they were, wouldn't have physically known the word down. And it's never stated in the book that the rabbits call it that. They call it the High Hills. So in the BBC's adaptation, the rabbits have got their crap at digging, and they've already passed the farm. In the book, they do not do that. In the BBC's adaptation, they then go back to the farm and God, how do I describe this? It's so bad. In the BBC's adaptation, they go back to the farm and they found 4 does in a hutch. And Clover, of course, is the main protagonist. Not Boxwood, not Laurel, who are oddly enough in the book males. Because there's 2 males, 2 females in the book. And it's only Bigwig, Hazel and Fiver in the BBC thing who go, and they nearly free the rabbits on their first adventure there. And then they go a little way off because a cat appears and attacks. It's an open-sided barn, and a cat comes through the side through a cat flap. I'm just leaving that one there because I just don't get it. And I've never seen a open-fronted barn, complete, big barn, one open front, 2 and 3 sides with a cat flap. Never, ever, ever have I seen this before, and I've been on a few farms. So the rabbits in the BBC adaptation go off, have a sleep at night, and then go back to the farm to try and free the 4 does, which have now been moved into a conservatory in the farm. Tell you what, there aren't that many farms who can afford to have a conservatory, believe me. And the BBC's adaptation has Hazel going back on his own to try and free the hutch rabbits which are in the conservatory in the house. And he goes in the house and tries to break them free. The cat gets in the way. There's a stupid little fight. Bigwig comes in and rescues them, and they all try and escape. And there's this really stupid scene with a farmer's wife character. Now, none of this happens in the book. None of it. And the farmer's wife in the book is actually a very ill lady. Lucy's mother is not well. She's actually bedridden. And that's part of, in the book, that's quite a key pivotal thing, because it means that Lucy has a very important role to play at the end with her friend, her mother's doctor. Now, in this fight scene, the woman farmer, the farmer's wife is, I'm going to be honest, I think it was actually extremely bad taste how they portrayed the 2 farmers, so the farmer and his wife, because they're trying to catch Lucy's tame rabbits, and the wild ones mixed in, they're all gallivanting everywhere. And the farmer himself raises a gun, double-barrel shotgun, and goes to shoot one of the Lucy's rabbits. Now in the book, I think one of them's an Angora, pretty darn different to a wild rabbit. And there's a comment made about, oh, I don't care if I shoot her rabbits or not. Now, I'm sorry, but farmers are pretty darn sensible, grounded people. They have to be for their job. They see horrific things in their lives. They work their socks off, and they are not all ignorant commoners like the BBC has portrayed. I'm sorry. I'm absolutely disgusted at how the BBC has portrayed a farmer. Come on, guys, on Christmas Day, most people at home will be getting up, opening presents, having a laugh, sitting around the family. A lot of farmers will be getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going up hills, going out to the fields, checking livestock, putting feed down, getting the tractor out, doing the rounds. The wife, nowadays, quite often sat doing the paperwork, because farming is a huge amount of paperwork behind farming right now. The wife, eventually, they'll work together. She could be out in the lambing shed. So it's just, it really angered me at the BBC's portrayal of farmers. They portrayed them almost like klutzes and stupid, and I find that very deeply insulting. But anyway, Hazel of course gets shot and crawls into a drain. In the book, the drain, the farmer and his friend, another man, are out, and one holds a torch and the other uses the gun. I think one's called John, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I've read the book enough times. So Hazel vanishes into nettles and manages to hide in the land drain. Now the BBC's adaptation has a female black rabbit of inlay appear to Hazel and kind of say, oh, it's not your time to die, kind of thing. This does not happen in the book. The black rabbit of inlay is a male, and it's stated multiple times during the stories. Even Bigwig says, in fact, oh my god, that's what they missed out. That's a massive chunk. They missed out the part where Holly was coming up the ditch with Bluebell, crying out, Zorn, Zorn, destroy the Zorn. And Bigwig doesn't know it's him and thinks it's the Black Rabbit come to claim him after he was stuck in the snare. They missed out that chunk. That's the biggest... Oh my god. Sorry, oh my god. They're just missing out everything. So they've missed out that. Now, the General Woundwort character is, once again, a blind in one eye, stereotypical big bully character. And this is sad because when you read the book and you read about actually Woundwort's past and what he went through, what he saw, you realise that he's only the way he is because of the things that have happened to him. He's not really a tyrant. He's not really an insane creature who's trying to make everyone misery. At the end of the day, he's trying to protect his people the best that he can by using discipline and a military way of thinking. So I'm just going to amend this here. I've got this here slightly wrong. So, spoiler alert, for those of you who don't know or haven't had the privilege of reading the book, Woundwort was, as a baby, he was born in a burrow near to a gardener's veggie patch. And his father was a very reckless go-lucky bucky and would raid the garden and sadly paid for it. And the garden owner thought, sod this, I'm getting rid of a lot of them. So he dug out Woundwort's mother and the kittens. And as they tried to run, and she'd already been shot and was bleeding out badly, Woundwort was the only one who managed to stay by her side all the way while she was bleeding, until a muskrat, I think it was a weasel, came and, due to the smell of blood, attacked her and killed her, leaving Woundwort cowering in the bush, watching his mother being killed. And then Woundwort was actually rescued by a schoolmaster who took him home and fed him and kept him alive and kept him in the kitchen. Woundwort kept a very wild and aggressive instinct and eventually broke free from the humans, or the teacher, and went off and found a warren, took it over, because you go and think he would have been bigger, heavier and healthier than most wild rabbits because he'd been raised in captivity and fed the best. So he went into a warren and took it over, and then moved the warren to where Ethelfeld was based, and then took over other warrens around the area to make what became the main warren. And at the end of the day, all he was trying to do was control things. So like having each run separate, so that if a disease broke out in one run, the rest of the warren wouldn't catch it. So the BBC portrays like ITV portrayed, like a lot of people portray Woundwort as a psychopathic, controlling, evil villain. He's not quite as evil as people make out. The punishment system, pretty much look at human modern society. Look at the medieval period. What do we do to traitors in the medieval period? Off with head. What do we do with spies still? In some countries they still kill them. So and look at the Middle East. If you steal, some of the punishments are removal of limbs. So keep an open mind on if you really think that General Woundwort is as evil as the BBC and the ITV have portrayed him. Just keep an open mind on it. But the next piece of the Watership Down thing is tonight, because it's got to kind of this area. It's just, I would say watch it, but don't at all think that it is anything to do with the book, because like I say, it is so badly done and loosely based that you can't suddenly see it and think, oh, I've got to read the book. You won't want to read the book. You'll think the book is naff after seeing what the BBC's produced. If you're going to watch Watership Down, watch the original, because that is a more beautiful version. And also, definitely read the book. Yes, it's a big book, and you do have to pay attention, but it is a stunning, stunning book. I also can't stand the fact that they've portrayed several of the rabbits as kind of sex-driven maniacs. I mean, that's just... But yeah, I just needed to rant and say, I mean, the animation quality of the production as well is absolutely terrible. I'm not kidding you. I've seen junior animators produce things that are so superior. In fact, some kids at school will produce so many things superior. And I mean, there's... The animation looks so cheap. It makes the BBC's Peter Rabbit version look good. So the ground is like just grey, greyish brown, and that's most of what the ground is. There's no texture detail, there's no variation. In the original animation, the backgrounds were beautifully painted cells, because it was all done on cell work. Absolutely stunning work. The painters back then who could do cell art, wow, amazing work. But this one by the BBC, which is all CGI'd, computer, whatnot, no. If they put more detail into the rabbits and made them look more like real rabbits, you could kind of forgive the diabolical background. Or if they'd done more detail in the background and actually made it look like real countryside and plants and had a little bit more rendering in there, you can maybe just about forgive how bad the rabbits look. But because both are terrible, it's just a shambles. So there's a sketch of a real rabbit. This is one that I actually met up in not in Portland, at one of the nature reserves somewhere near the Lordmore. There's a small, very, very small warren there, and the rabbits aren't too bothered about people, so you can get quite up close and personal with them, which is always nice. Now, in the UK we have a virus called myxomatosis, and a lot of our rabbits are affected by it. In fact, on the island of Portland, most of the warrens are infested with myxomatosis, and it's nasty. It does horrific things to rabbits. And sometimes what landowners will do is they'll call in a pest control team who will gas all of the rabbits simply to stop the disease in its tracks. Now, the UK has had a bad history of myxomatosis. We don't have that many predators because predators have all been killed out, and not every predator can get into the burrows to get the infected rabbits. But yeah, so that's a real rabbit drawing. Where's my bit paper? I'm going to take the mic and sketch out one of the BBC's ones. I mean, I've been around a few of the warrens where the mixie is, and you kind of find dead rabbits just laid out on the ground, and their eyes are messed up badly. It's quite disturbing. So that's the real rabbit. Now for the fake rabbit. Let me just pull up a screenshot. Oopsie, I need an image. Something that really bugged me about the BBC's version is the fact that the ears were facing. I mean, I know rabbits' ears can oscillate and supinate and whatnot, they can move, but the positions that the ears were in a lot of the time were just weird. So, the Watership down. One, so let's see. Let's try and find an edge which I can align to this one. So the BBC's rabbits were kind of like, see this big circle, the eye sunk in, and the limbs, oh my god, like I said, the anatomically incorrect rabbit was just weird. And then their ears for the BBC came like that. So that's the inside of the ear. Yeah, and they were quite often in this position. And then the limbs, which is why I think they were actually looking at hares more than rabbits, because the front limbs were huge and massive, great big paws. And in all honesty, I have never seen a rabbit with limbs this long, apart from maybe the Belgian hare, which, yes, oddly enough, is a rabbit. Oh no, that goes that way. Sorry, they're just, it's so bad, it's hard to draw. Then it goes around like that. Oh, and their tails. This was the hilarious thing. The tails, on a normal rabbit's bottom, their tail is white because when they're in danger they flash it up, and every other, a bit like some deer do. So flash of white means danger, everyone scatter. But the BBC's rabbits had non-white tails. They were like grey all over. Really, really messed up. So that is roughly, very roughly, what the BBC rabbits' proportions look like. So I'm just trying to find this pose that they were constantly in. Yeah, and for the BBC, the pose that they mostly had them in was this really weird standing pose. Now, I've been around a few warrens, as I say. I've stood, sat and watched, and I've never really seen a rabbit, in all honesty, stand like this constantly. And I do feel that the animators have never seen a real rabbit, and I certainly feel that if they have, they haven't actually paid any attention to what a real rabbit looks, moves, or anything. Maybe they went down to Pets at Home or something. So the pose that the rabbits in the BBC production are always in is this. So instead of being in a natural sat shape, or as my little real rabbit demo here shows, just sat, chillaxed, the BBC's rabbits are sat in this weird pose. This is why I wonder if they were looking at hares not rabbits. So let's see. Just trying to find. I mean, it doesn't look like I'm the only person slating this either. Oh, and this will make you laugh. One of the poses that they have one of the rabbits in, so I really shouldn't be using this as scrap. They're going to have a rabbit posed with his head there, the ears back here, and then the arms out here. So in the BBC's adaptation, they seem to be pushing the boundaries of anatomical movement a little bit too far. And yes, I know there is some flexation, but this pose would indicate that the rabbits actually have shoulders like humans do, whereas they don't. They have the shoulder blade is attached differently. So that is going to just be twisted. Oh, and another pose that they did was, oh god, how was it? It was during a river chase scene, in which apparently rabbits can cling onto branches. They had a pose where the rabbit's arm was way out, seriously, way out over there, going to strike somebody below. Oh, that was the awesome bit. That was the hilarious bit. Biggest mistake the animators made? The rabbit's feet. Rabbits do not have paws. So when you look at the underside of a rabbit's foot, you won't see, and I repeat, you will not see that is not a rabbit's underside paw. Rabbits do not have paw pads. Hear that, BBC? Rabbits do not have friggin' paw pads. You did not pay attention. You did not even see a rabbit. You've never even handled a rabbit. What rabbits have is fur, and then they have skin. Okay? Rabbits do not have paw pads. You can see, you guys I think can see why I was just getting so wound up and cheesed off with this crap. Now, this one's that one. Now, there's also the scene in Cowslip's Warren. So I'm going to go back to drawing a real rabbit. Because unlike the BBC, I know what one looks like. So, here's my paper. We're just using some cardstock right now for quick drawings. So I need just grab my little picture. So in the scene of Cowslip's Warren, they show the rabbits going to collect flera, or food that's been put out by the farmer who snares them. And the whole thing is really weird. It's a bit perverse actually. This kind of almost sounds like an orgy. In all honesty, the sound effects do not work. And in the book, the rabbit's Cowslip's warren, well, it's not really his warren because he says that there's nobody in charge. There's no chief rabbit. Because, of course, a chief rabbit has to be El Hara for the warren, and no chief rabbit can sort a snare issue out. So they kind of have just every rabbit decides on their own what they're going to do. Now, the sad thing is that the BBC missed out on a key piece, because in the Warren of Snares, nobody must ask where anybody else is. You can only use where in song, poem, or anything else, but not in just questioning. So if you turn around and said, "Where is," the rabbits immediately would change the conversation and walk away. Now, Fiver goes through a very, very poignant piece at this time during the War on the Snares, and the BBC completely overshot that, didn't bother to do it. Well, they included the famous line of you were closer to death than I, but the speed in which the BBC's bigwig goes through the hedge gap, it's impossible for, how can I describe this? The snare post is like there, and the snare is kind of way down. Now, when Bigwig walks into it, he's meant in the book he's at full pelt running because he's furious and he's going back to the Warren to tell everyone to finish it with Fiver. Hazel is never threatened at this point in the book. In the BBC's adaptation, Bigwig, they seem to want to portray as a right jerk. Honestly, the Bigwig character in the BBC's adaptation is an idiot, and I'm surprised that they would portray him like that, because his character actually has got multiple levels. But there was things like the rabbits were expected to carry the food back. Right, bear with me. But none of that's shown. Bear with me. Just need to put mute. Sorry, the family's come back, so I'm going to have to wrap this up because otherwise it's just going to be absolute noise. So the BBC missed out a huge chunk of character building and also background. Yeah, they're going to be really noisy downstairs. Of course they can. The minute I tell them that I'm doing a live stream, they make as much noise as possible. So overall, what do I rate the BBC's adaptation at? I don't rate it. I wouldn't actually even waste my breath rating it. It's one of the possible worst adaptations or even ideas of being called Watership Down. It's insulting to the author, who wrote a beautiful book, and it's insulting to the viewer. The characters are portrayed badly, the quality is diabolical, it's out of context of the complete thing. Would I recommend watching it? No, I would not. Don't waste your time, and certainly if it comes out on DVD, do not waste your money. I think that the BBC have let themselves down. In fact, they've let a lot of people down by producing such rubbish. I'm surprised they even did it, in all honesty. Just tidy up the sketch. It's just a very quick little sketch of a real rabbit. I've slightly over exaggerated the shoulder blade, but I've not done it as over exaggerated and bad as the BBC. But if you want to learn about rabbits, then there are some good books at your local libraries, and if you want to see rabbits in the wild, there are a lot of warrens out there, and you just need to be respectful, not leave any litter around there. And quite often, even though you might see rabbits race off, if you sit down undercover somewhere, you can quite often see rabbits acting naturally, playing and doing rabbity things. I've done the head a little bit bigger there, so I can sort that out. But yeah, definitely please read the book Watership Down, and don't think that the BBC's adaptation has anything to do with it, because, like I say, it hasn't. So there we go. And there's our little rabbit sketch. So till next time, thank you very much for popping by, and I'll catch you on the next stream. So till next time, take care, all the best, and happy drawing to you all.